Welcome, everyone. We have the pleasure to present to you the official release of GBS Open. So we are very proud of this huge step in the development of the GBS. We will have an introduction by Marianne Louradour, our CEO. Then we will have the pleasure to have Humberto from the European Commission on how open tools will accelerate biodiversity impact analysis and apply European frameworks. Then Emma will present to you the synergies between the GBS and reporting frameworks. And myself and Valentin will present the features that will be available in GBS Open, and we'll have some time for questions and answers. So without further ado, I will let the floor to Marianne Louradour, the CEO of CDC Biodiversité.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you warmly to this webinar and to tell you that this is an important day. That is an important day for us at CDC Biodiversité. It is indeed the day we launched the open source version of our innovative tool, the Global Biodiversity Score. This occasion marks an important milestone and symbolizes our continued commitment to transparency, scientific excellence, and common good. Let's take a moment to tell you about the remarkable evolution of the GBS. It began in 2016 with the launch of the B4B Plus Club, which aims to involve a whole ecosystem of stakeholders to take a part in the transformation required to protect biodiversity. In 2020, thanks to the collaborative spirit, we were able to release the third version of the GBS. Over time, the GBS has constantly evolved, improving its features, introducing new versions, and extending its scope. Today, it stands as a comprehensive biodiversity footprint assessment tool, and it is accessible to companies, financial institutions, and soon local authorities. We have always been committed to transparency. We submit our methodology to critical review, and we ensure that our results are accessible to all through a wide range of publications. Our collaboration with the academic community runs deep, covering methodological developments and financing an important thesis project. All this is possible thanks to the dedicated team of over 20 people, each providing their expertise to refine and improve the tool. Supported by our shareholder, the Caisse des Dépôts, the largest public financial institution in France, the decision to release an open source version is fully in line with our overarching strategy and our fundamental principle, openness and the public interest. Looking back over the last 2 decades, we know the interconnection between the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. And on the front of climate action, one of the key milestones was the development of a carbon footprinting methodology accessible to all through an open source version. It has been instrumental in facilitating large-scale adoption and collaboration on tackling climate change. Today, we are living in the moment where biodiversity is sharing the spotlight. And I am sure the Global Biodiversity Score has the potential to become an international reference to measuring biodiversity impact. The transition to an open source model is a major step toward this ambition, paving the way for greater accessibility and cooperation. to conclude, I extend my deep gratitude to all who have contributed to this remarkable project. Let us continue to work together to create a more sustainable and resilient environment for all. And now, it's a pleasure for me to give the floor to Mr. Humberto Delgado Rosa, Director for Biodiversity at the European Commission. I'm grateful that you found time to be with us today. Mr. Delgado, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I hope you hear me well. I did hear you very well. And I must say, I'm really pleased to be in this webinar. You know, I've noticed in your presentation that your score, the Global Biodiversity Score, the beginning was in 2015. And actually, I started in DG Environment dealing with nature and biodiversity, guess when? In 2015. So with your predecessor, since the early beginning, I somehow followed not only the activities of CDC Biodiversité, but specifically the GBF, this very nice tool that keeps evolving as a tool for biodiversity footprint measurement. And before saying more on the score on the GBS itself, let me say that actually, you know, metrics and quantification are a fundamental element for wider biodiversity policy. And that's why, in fact, when we had to move into a rather ambitious biodiversity strategy to 2030 in the context of the European Green Deal, we knew that quantification was key. So one does find within the biodiversity strategy of the EU quite some quantification of targets of all kinds, targets on pressures, targets on restoration, targets on protection, and also the aim to promote natural capital accounting, which is as a tool fundamental for business that want to take into account their risks, dependencies, impacts, and opportunities, by the way, in relation to biodiversity. And actually, this need for quantification was also vindicated in the Global Biodiversity Framework agreed in 2022 in Montreal, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which has indeed also a lot of quantification, again, on pressures of several kinds, on protection, on restoration, on pollution, on finance, and so forth, together with provisions for the disclosure by businesses of their biodiversity impacts, risks, and dependencies. So now, getting back to your tool, to the GBS as a tool, we, of course, in the Commission and here DG Environment, welcome very much that this move to make it accessible for free, because indeed removing the financial barrier will foster interest and uptake, and it opens yet another door for those several businesses actually that are starting to embark in their biodiversity journey, in their approach to be able to take into account their biodiversity footprint. They have here another tool, a very valid one. Furthermore, I think specifically for SMEs or for non-profit organizations, this will be very welcome for sure. And if SMEs are as such small or medium, but together they are actually more influential in the wider EU economy than large corporations. So that's also very welcome from that point of view. I'm convinced that organizations will now go and test the GBF for their goals, and they will get, hopefully, they'll get convinced not only of the suitability of the tool, but of the suitability of addressing biodiversity, quantifying, having a score that allows them to take decisions on their strategies and plans, dealing also with biodiversity and not only climate, but both together. We welcome also very much that the Global Biodiversity Score covers both biodiversity impacts, but also the dependencies on ecosystem services. So it does give a complete picture of where a business can stand. And it also covers in a complete way the own operations of a specific business, but also the supply chain. So it's comprehensive, and it's actually very important for any accounting approach to allow for a reliable priority setting. It must be comprehensive, or we have an incomplete picture. So I think this indeed, to put it simply, it's a very valid source now, more available in order to allow a well-defined priority setting for businesses. A further aspect to welcome is that the GBS is aligned with the major existing and upcoming reporting and disclosure approaches, be them voluntary or regulatory. Voluntary like the NFD, but also from the regulatory side, as an example, the EU Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive, or the French Article 29 of your national law on energy and climate. And by the way, just to mention a related development, right yesterday, our EU Business and Biodiversity Platform has presented for the first time its report on biodiversity disclosure initiatives. So there's quite some stakeholder demand for us to help to provide an overview of existing approaches to disclose corporate biodiversity information. And indeed, these measurement tools like the GBS and reporting approaches are actually very complementary. So the GBS will certainly serve as a support for whatever biodiversity reporting. And finally, having it free as a free tool, I think will also invite the academia, the experts and other actors to look at it, suggest improvements to the tool or to the use that can be given to the data towards a progress that is unavoidable. I mean, as a final message, this perception that we cannot go on degrading the biosphere through our economic and social activity because we depend on it is more and more captured now. And this kind of tool is absolutely essential for the economy, or what moves the economy, mostly business, to change course for their own sake, not only on the risks, but also on opportunities. So Marianne, thank you very much for inviting me, and I pass the floor to you.
Many thanks, Humberto, for being with us today and for your insightful words. You clearly underlined the importance of promoting open and accessible tools to measure biodiversity impacts, risks, dependencies, and also to have institutions that play a leading role in environmental and biodiversity conservation issues. And the Global Biodiversity Score and its open source version are obviously a key part of it. I'm Godefroy, and I've been working on the GBS and its application for 2 years now. And before we get into the details of this open source version, let me give a brief overview of the GBS for those who may not be familiar with it. So I will present what exactly it measures and to whom it is addressed. And I will also try to provide an overview of of the way it fits with the different reporting frameworks that are emerging. So the Global Biodiversity Score evaluates both the impact on biodiversity, but also how much an activity rely on ecosystem services through dependency measures. And as Humberto underlined it, this dual perspective is key for understanding the full scope of our environmental footprint. It relies on transparent methodology that has not just been developed, but also peer-reviewed and published. And the methodology of the GBS is built on models sourced from leading institutions, ensuring that the tool insights are accurate, meaningful. And the development team of the GBS is not working in isolation. We are engaged with national and international bodies like SBTN, Align, the TNFD to ensure that the GBS aligns with all the global standards and practices. So the GBS provides a comprehensive overview of impacts and dependencies on activities, but it doesn't just look at direct impacts, but also examines the entire value chain. It focuses on 4 out of 5 main pressure and biodiversity that are defined by the IPBS: land use, exploitation, climate change, and pollutions. And finally, the outcome of the GBS are expressed in a unique metric, the MSA square kilometer, that reflects the condition of an ecosystem. So without going very deeply into the methodological details of the GBS, The main approach that is used in the tool is to assess corporate biodiversity footprint by linking activities on economic activity to pressures on biodiversity and to translate these pressures into biodiversity impacts. And to link activity data, pressures, and impacts, the GBS relies on peer-reviewed tools such as Exio-based or GloBio, a model developed by the PBL, the Environmental Agency of the Netherlands, which assesses the impact of various pressures on biodiversity intactness. So all those underlying assumptions are completely transparent, and other open data are also used in the methodology and feed the tool. And finally, the GBS ecosystem also includes experts who ensure the methodological robustness of the tool. Before its launch in 2020, a formal review process was conducted with a review committee to verify the consistency and the quality of the tool. Even if the GBS was initially designed to measure the impact and dependencies of companies, its scopes of application has been progressively extended. So the methodology has also been transposed for financial institutions covering non-listed assets, such as private equity or real estate loans, or listed assets through the database developed in partnership with Carbon for Finance, a database that relies on the GBS methodology. And CDC Biodiversité is currently developing an adapted version of the tool for local authorities. Different types of actors have their role to play and show an increased interest for biodiversity footprinting and dependency measurement tools. So through all the phases of development, released and used, the GBS has raised a rich ecosystem of stakeholders to mainstream biodiversity footprints among all the business community. So all this ecosystem is composed of external assessor consultants who are trained by CDC Biodiversité to master the GBS and to conduct biodiversity assessment for businesses. It's also composed, obviously, of companies who can either go through an assessment with CDC Biodiversité or with external consultants, or they can also get trained and conduct themselves an assessment of their activity and value chain. And in a similar way, data providers or rating agencies trained by CDC Biodiversité to master the GBS can conduct biodiversity scoring for companies or financial institutions. Financial institutions also have the possibility to get trained or to use data based on the GBS. And finally, another aspect is the academic community who can get trained on biodiversity footprinting, it can also conduct research and publish peer-reviewed paper using the GBS. And finally, CDC Biodiversité, who has a central position in the GBS ecosystem, not only because it has a team who developed the GBS, but also because it has been hosting the Business for Biodiversity for Positive Biodiversity Club, a network of more than 50 companies, financial institutions, consultants that are keen to better understand biodiversity footprinting and the role it could play and how they can use it. Today, more than 20 assessors or consultants have been trained to use the tool, and many companies and financial institutions have already carried out an assessment with the GBS. More concretely, the GBS allows you to measure the biodiversity footprint to get a comprehensive view of impact and dependency across the entire value chain and analyze where these impacts come from. And based on this analysis of impact, it's possible to estimate trajectories, action plan on how to reduce the impact, track the progress, and promote all of these actions. Considering the biodiversity crisis, we also saw in the past year that the biodiversity topics are rising in the international agenda, and that the landscape is structuring itself. In December 2022, the Community Montreal framework has been adopted. So it is to biodiversity what the Paris Agreement was to climate. It defines clear targets we need to reach to reverse and to halt biodiversity. So these targets are adopted at the global level and are reflected in regulatory requirements. So there are now requirements for companies, financial institutions to report on extra financial data. At the European level, the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Sustainable Reporting Directives, is concerning more and more companies. And for financial institutions, it's Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulations. In addition to these regulatory requirements, we also saw an enabling frameworks that is emerging, such as the SBTN, the TNFD, to help frame and define how to properly disclose information on impacts and dependencies on biodiversity. And many of these frameworks also happen for the climate crisis. So in this context, it's important for companies to define, to understand the relationship to biodiversity, both in terms of impacts and dependencies, to be aligned with these emerging frameworks, and also to take actions to reverse the halt of biodiversity, to ensure reliance of their activity. And the GBS is one of the tools that can be used to address this. After 4 years of negotiation, the GBF, Global Biodiversity Framework, was adopted in Montreal on December 2022. So the objective of the GBF is to halt biodiversity. And this agreement is a major step forward, and it gives 4 long-term goals to reach by 2050 and 23 targets to reach by 2030. So the goal A aims to increase the area of natural ecosystem, to reduce the risk of extinction of all species, to maintain genetic diversity. And the GBS can be used to measure the increase in ecosystem integrity required by this goal A. Regarding the 23 global targets that are broken up into 3 broad topics, some of them are dedicated to the main trait of biodiversity, land and water use change, reducing pollution, tackle climate change. And so the GBS allows to measure the action taken by company to achieve these 23 targets. And it includes also target 15. So through this target 15, governments have explicitly committed to require all large companies and financial institutions to reduce their negative impacts and increase biodiversity by assessing, disclosing their risks, impacts, dependencies on nature. And the GBS is one response to measure that. So beyond the Global Biodiversity Framework, the GBS also contributes to meeting other reporting requirements, whether they are regulatory, such as the CSRD, or initiative to support companies and financial institutions, such as the SBTN or the TNFDs. And the GBS provides a response in 2 ways. First, by directly using the outputs of the GBS to feed the reporting, for example, the impacts or the dependency measurements and the analysis that is done based on the results. but also by reporting data that has been collected and used as inputs for the evaluation of impact and dependencies. For example, land use data, tonnage of commodities, water consumptions, GHG emissions. So the purpose for the next minute is to show you a few brief examples of the compliance of the GBS for 3 frameworks: the CRCD, the SBTN, and the TNFD. So the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CRCRD, with the advent of this directive, an increasing number of companies will have to comply with these requirements. So it provides a detailed framework for the information that have to be disclosed. And the ESRS gives the specific content that has to be produced. Specifically, the ESRS E4 deals with biodiversity and ecosystem and provides a structured approach to disclose. So the content of the ESRS E4 is divided into distinct requirements designed to guide company, and the GBS can furnish a comprehensive response to it. First, because the detailed assessment of impact and dependencies allowed by the GBS feed the materiality assessments. Also, because by understanding where the impact comes from, the GBS allows to build impact reduction scenarios and align the strategy of the company with the Global Biodiversity Framework. Also, reduction action can be quantified with the GBS to build up an action plan. And it finally allows to monitor the progress of the action plan that has been defined, ensuring that the impact of the company can comply with the precise and the quantified targets that have been set. So the strategy is not just about reporting, it's also an opportunity and a robust approach that allows company to measure comprehensive impacts and to define a clear strategy. And a very comprehensive presentation has been produced in part by CDC Biodiversité teams that you could find later on the slides. Then the SBTN, Science-Based Targets Network, has developed a 5-step framework and is developing guidance and tools to help companies on their biodiversity journey. And the step 1 of this approach required the companies to conduct materiality assessment at the sector level to identify the most important pressures. And this step 1 of the SBTN also requires to estimate the company's contribution towards the environmental issue areas through an assessment over the value chain. So it consists in a mapping of the main impact of a company in its value chain to identify which sector the company needs to work first and which supplier can start to engage actions. And the GBS allows to respond both of them. And finally, it gives also some elements for the step 3, measure, set, and disclose. But those elements will need to be reviewed once the SBTN releases a comprehensive step 3 methodology. And finally, it can be also useful for step 5 track, because through several and repeated assessments and the application of the GBS verified solution, it can provide verification of disclosed impact. One of the latest GBS publications provide more details on the link between the GBS and the SBTN frameworks. And lastly, the TNFD, which provides a framework for risk management and disclosure. It suggests in particular a 4-step approach on the nature-related impacts, dependencies, risks, and opportunities, that is the LEAP approach. So here the GBS can be used in combination with other tools and approaches to connect to the LEAP framework. CDC Biodiversité has led several pilots to test the feasibility of this framework for companies and financial institutions. So how does it connect? First, during the locate phase, data fed into the GBS can and they should include data at the site level on pressure to assess the ecosystem integrity at each location. And the GBS can also be used to conduct a first screening of impacts and dependencies for the locate phase. But the most direct use of the GBS occurs during the evaluate phase because the tool allows to identify and analyze the dependencies with the dependency score and impacts on ecosystem integrity. Finally, impacts and dependencies results computed with the GBS can feed into the identification of the company's nature-related risks and opportunities during the assess phase. And lastly, the GBS allows to set targets and define strategies as it is requested in the prepare phase. In addition, the TNFD has listed the metrics to be reported, and these include ecosystem condition, which is what the GBS measure through the MSA, the mean species abundance metric, which is cited as one metric which can be used to monitor ecosystem condition. Finally, it's important to bear in mind that the GBS is obviously not sufficient in itself to meet all those requirements, and that is, it needs to be supplemented by other tools to have a full picture of biodiversity. But the idea was to show you that it is in line with what is currently required in the reporting frameworks, and that we are also working to ensure that it remains so. I will now let Patricia and Valentin present what brought us today, the open source version of the GBS.
Thank you very much. So I'm Patricia Zhang, responsible of the development of the GBS tool. And we will present to you in more details the features of GBS Open and how to access to it. So GBS Open, as the name says, is an open source and open data version of the GBS, and it will be available for non-commercial use with a slight delay version compared to the current GBS. So why we have chosen to release GBS Open? So this release will contribute to make biodiversity footprint tools even more transparent, and it will enable, we hope, more research on this topic of the linkage between biodiversity and business. And also we hope that it will bring possible improvement to the tool and empower more economic actors to measure their footprint. And also this release will make the GBS even more widely used and known and enhance the visibility of our users community, notably with the context of emerging reporting frameworks and standard setters are also referencing mostly open source tools. So I will present to you now some use cases we see for GBS Open. So especially GBS Open can be used in the context of research to assess biodiversity footprint and dependencies of corporations, financial institutions, economic actors, sectors. So that could be useful to research on linkage between biodiversity and business. And also the methodology and the code of the GBS Open are transparent and also opened. We welcome your contributions on this topic. GBS Open can be also used for biodiversity footprint self-assessments. So it's a great way to start your biodiversity footprint journey with this tool to compute your footprint and dependency linked to biodiversity. And so that you could begin to prepare for compliance with the different emerging reporting standards and international frameworks. And also by doing so, you will join a community of active users on this topic, and you will be able also to provide feedback to our team. And we continuously develop and improve the GBS. Here's an overview of the different GBS plans and also which tool will be accessible according to each plan. So you have the B4B Plus Club membership, the standalone GBS license, and the free plan. And GBS Open will come with the free plan at the right of the slide. And the two first columns will grant you access to the full GBS. So with both tools, GBS and GBS Open, you will be able to compute your impacts and dependencies on biodiversity. But the main technical difference between the GBS and GBS Open will be the delay in terms of version of the tool. So you will be able to access to the latest version and the latest developments with the GBS, but with the GBS Open, we will have a slight delay. We will present that in more details in the upcoming slides. In terms of technical support, so GBS documentation are transparent and accessible to all. So you will find the links to the different publications, documentations in the slides we will share to you after the webinar. So with the B4B+ Club membership, you will have additional technical support, 5 hours of technical support and specific webinars to address your questions linked to the use of the GBS and how to interpret the results. And with the standalone GBS license in the free plan, there won't be any technical support. In terms of license, so with the GBS, there will be a specific trademark software and data license to sign. And with GBS Open, I will present to you in the upcoming slides what will be the license in terms of use of GBS Open. So you can make commercial use of the GBS only with the B4B+ Club membership and not with the other plans. The detailed fees will be available in the links that we share in the slides. And for all the 3 plans, in terms of results communication, it will be mandatory to mention whether the assessment you have done with the GBS or GBS Open has been done by a certified GBS assessor or not. The detailed guidelines will be provided in the documentation we will share to you. So what are the detailed licenses of GBS Open? So in terms of software license, the license of the code of the GBS, so it will be available under the terms of the AGPL version 3 license. So on the slides, there will be a clickable link. So it's a copyleft license. That means that the code of the package GBS Open can be integrated in another project if only this project is licensed under the same license AGPL3. In terms of data, especially the impact factors within GBS Open, they are not available for commercial use. And also it's a copyleft license, that meaning that if data has been adapted and shared with others, it must be also shared under the same license conditions. Finally, regarding the trademark license, so there will be, so the use of GBS Open shall follow the trademark guidelines we will share to you. And there will be no supplementary fees to use this trademark. And especially regarding trademarks, so it should be reported with the results, who has made the assessment, the versions of the tool that has been used, and most importantly, whether the usage has been done by an assessor that was trained or not to the GBS. So you will have the link on the detailed licenses and terms of use of GBS Open. So I will now let the floor to Valentin, who will present to you in more detail the technical features of GBS Open and how to access to it.
Thank you, Patricia, and hello, everyone. My name is Valentin Ract, and I work as a developer for CDC Biodiversité, where I'm currently involved in the development of the GBS tool, especially in the open source project. And I'm very pleased to participate today in the presentation of the open source GBS. So let's delve into the difference between the versions of GBS and GBS Open. First, what you need to know is that when an update of the GBS is deployed, it is identified by 3 digits separated by points. The first number corresponds to the release, the second one to the version, and finally the third one to the fixes. GBS Open has indeed a delay of 1 version compared to the latest stable version of the GBS. Indeed, the current GBS is at version 1.4.8 and GBS Open is available at the latest maintenance fix of 1.3, which historically was 1.3.2. You can see on the first timeline the latest maintenance fixed version of the GBS that were released over time. The current version of the GBS is highlighted in green, and just before the current version, the latest stable version of the GBS, the 1.3.2, was released in 2022 and is indeed the current version of GBS Open. So next, when it comes to accessing the GBS, all the information you need will be stored online on the GBS Open webpage. You can find the link on the presentation, and basically this page will be hosting the following information. So context on global biodiversity loss, the introduction of the GBS Open tool, a guidance on how to install and how to use GBS Open on your computer, but also training opportunities provided by CDC Biodiversité and other GBS plans. So technically, GBS Open will be shared as a R package to install locally on your computer, shared with GitHub. Before installing GBS Open, you should verify the following points. So because the GBS computes a lot of data, it can be memory consuming. So make sure that your computer has at least 8 gigabytes of memory. You need also to create a GitHub account because the GBS files are stored on this versioning platform. Then you need to fill out an online form and sign the GBS licenses so that we grant you access to the GitHub repository and GBS Open tool. After filling the form and after around a maximum of 1 week, you will receive a GitHub invitation via email. And then after accepting this invitation, you should install on your computer the ecosystem of free softwares used by the GBS tool, that is R and R Studio. These tools are used to compute the data. And finally, install GitHub Desktop. This app serves to update your version of the GBS and to participate to the development of GBS Open. After completing all these steps, you are all set to install and run GBS Open. Thanks to the documentation, you will be guided by step-by-step videos and materials. And you have the links on the presentation to the documentation. So moving on to the GBS Open overview and the possible contribution to the development of the tool, you can see on the right a screenshot of the R package of the GBS Open as it will be shared to you on GitHub. All these files can be scary, but don't be. They contain data and function that the GBS will use in the background, while you will only have to fill some input files related to the pressures on biodiversity, the commodities, and the products used, and or financial data you might have, and launch the execution of the tool. Concerning contributing to the development of the GBS, what you need to know is that 2 branches will be available on GBS Open. The first one is the branch called main. This branch is the official one. It will evolve with the release of GBS versions as developed by CDC Biodiversité teams. The second branch is called collaborative. It is, at the contrary, dedicated to participatory development. It is intended to receive proposals for improvement to existing code or addition of new features from users. For more information on how to collaborate on GBS open development, a specific section will be added very soon in the documentation. And I let the floor to Patricia.
Thank you very much. So to finish on GBS Open, so where, if you're encountering the issue, where to find help? So you will have the link in the slides of all the available online documentation, especially we have made a quick start wiki for GBS Open with all the information you need to install GBS Open by yourself. Some information on how to read the results, where to find help, and also the legal documents, the terms of use. You also have the GBS documentations with the first version of the critical review of the GBS, and also the benchmark fact sheets, and for sure our latest publications with all the methodological improvements, conceptual frameworks, information, and context on biodiversity footprinting. Another way to find help would be to follow the trainings provided by CDC Biodiversité. So I will present to you an overview of that right after. And also, if you have remaining questions regarding the open source version of the GBS, you have a mail below to write to us. So in terms of trainings, so if you want to better understand biodiversity footprint and how to use the GBS, we propose to you several different trainings. So your journey will start with the fundamentals of biodiversity, which will give you a better overview and understanding of the biodiversity crisis, how this will impact the economy and also the activities, and how biodiversity footprint can help you to tackle these challenges. Then you can get trained to the GBS, starting with the level 1 training to understand the functioning and the key features of the GBS, which data you can collect, how to use the GBS to be able to perform a biodiversity footprint assessment with the GBS by yourself. But to perform a biodiversity footprint assessment by yourself, you can level up to the level 2 training, which also will grant you access to supplementary technical support if needed. We also have a specific training regarding applications for financial institutions that focus on understanding how to evaluate risks within your portfolio and how it will impact biodiversity and how it will also depend on it, and to better understand the regulatory context and the different tools to address it. And finally, we can also tailor specific intra-company trainings depending on your specific needs. So you can pre-register on the link that is available in the slides on the RiseUp platform, or reach directly the team. Also, if you want to go further in your journey in biodiversity footprint and to be supported to halt biodiversity loss and in your reflection on how to best integrate biodiversity in your strategy, you might be interested in joining the B4B+ Club, which is a network that is composed today of more than 45 companies, financial institutions, and consultancies where you'll be able to discuss with your peers and experts around biodiversity footprinted and the best use for biodiversity strategies and how to address the evolving regulations and reporting requirements. So joining the club will grant you broad range of services. So you will access to an ecosystem of actors in the club and also be invited to the different working groups. You will have also GBS, so a full GBS license and to access to the technical support directly on the use of the GBS, but also on broader topics on biodiversity, such as reporting requirements related to biodiversity. You will also receive regularly a newsletter with the latest news related to biodiversity footprinting, and you will have priority access to our trainings. So for more information, please contact us at the mail shown on the slide. So I will let the floor to Emma now, who will present to us the questions we have received.
Yes, we have several questions on the chat. We will maybe first focus on question that relates to the GBS open version of the tool, and if it remains sometimes, we could deal with all the other questions. They also all be well noted, and we'll try to provide you more detailed answers if we don't have time to deal with everything during the last minutes of the webinar. So the first question regarding the open source version is that how do you define non-commercial use if this is a tool that can be used by a company? Maybe Patricia, you can.
Yeah, related to non-commercial use, so it will be specifically providing services around biodiversity footprinting. So if the company if a company uses GBS Open to assess biodiversity footprint for internal use for itself, and then can communicate on the result, that is allowed within the terms of GBS Open. So it will be mostly linked to services around biodiversity footprinting and also developing other commercial platforms of biodiversity data with GBS Open that will be not allowed with the terms of use of GBS Open.
Thank you very much. Next, we have two questions from Angelica. The first being that with the free version, can we access to the ExioBase and GloBio model? And the second one, is it possible to have training on the tool for research purposes?
So regarding ExioBase and GloBio model, so these two are already open model that you can access directly without the GBS. But within GBS Open, you will have some impact factors and also a bit transformed data based on ExioBase and GloBio that you can read in the GBS Open package. And regarding the question on trainings, yeah, sorry, can you repeat the question?
If it can be accessed to researchers.
Yeah.
And to research purposes.
Yes, for sure, it will be accessible. So do not hesitate to contact us for this specific need.
Then we have another question regarding the open source applications. Could the GBS open source be used to measure the gains from one specific action on part of the value chain? The objective is to avoid redoing the entire GBS study on the entire company. So is this possible with the open source version?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, when you input data in GBS Open, you can kind of make scenarios of changes in terms of practices or purchases you have in your value chain. So that could be reflected in the results you have with GBS Open and GBS. So there was a question also on local authorities. Is the open version usable for local authorities, even for a test, or will be local authorities version very different? So we are conducting pilots for local authorities with the GBS. But if you have data, maybe that could be directly in the in a format that could fit GBS Open. You can do a test and use GBS Open by yourself. So in the documentation we provide in the wiki, there are some overviews of which type of data that can be collected. And within the GBS Open package, you also have a folder of the raw input files that you can use to compute results with GBS Open.
Thank you, Patricia. We have additional question of the GBS Open. So one question is, if I understand correctly, the GBS Open is an open source version of the GBS tool, but it does not provide access to an impact database with biodiversity footprints for companies and countries.
So with GBS Open, within the package GBS Open, you have access. You can read and use the impact factors of biodiversity impact per country, per commodities, etc. So you can read that, but it will be with the delayed version compared to the latest developments of the GBS. And can a free version of the tool be used by a financial institution on its portfolio? Yes, for self-assessment, you can completely use GBS Open and directly fill the input files, so especially the financial data input file with data on your portfolios. And regarding the non-commercial use, so I invite you to read in more detail the page terms of use in GBS Open. So there will be a trademark license, and at the end of the page, there's also a page of frequently asked questions. I think that should answer and to your question in more detail. Maybe we have time maybe for one
more question.
Last question.
The last just pop-ups. When will the open access version be updated to the last version of the GBS?
Yeah, so it would depend on the latest developments of the complete version of the GBS. So the next update will depend on the release of the version 1.5 of the GBS, so that GBS Open can be updated to 1.4. But yeah, so we gave you indications on the versions delay, but this does not provide guarantee on the timeline of the updates. Okay, so now it's 5 p.m. So thank you very much for your participation and your interest in GBS Open. I hope that yeah, you will enjoy the use of GBS Open. We are very excited for this release. So you will find so you can follow us on the different social networks. You will have the link in the slides that will be shared to you after the webinar. We also recorded the webinar, so it will be available on the platforms. Yeah, thank you very much again for your participation.